There's an old wooden house on the way home from the train station, near our hotel. Even though it's just a coincidence that the grime on the wall and the black door happen to be in the shape of a person. But it's always just that shape on the wall. I was curious about that old deserted house, so I decided to stop and take a look around the place. Although there was nobody home, I felt that no one would mind me taking a look around the place. After viewing of the house from the front and the side, I noticed a strange building at the back of the house, so I walked back there to take a look. The grounds at the back were more shabby than the front. The building at the back didn't seem so run down. In fact, it was in remarkably good condition. It looked like it had been built a lot later than the house was. I estimated it to be no more than 20 years old. It didn't have any windows and was made of stone. Gray stone. Suddenly I noticed that the padlock on the door was broken. The massive heavy iron door swung open reluctantly. Although there were no windows, light entered the structure through a skylight in the ceiling. There was a large stone block in the middle of the floor, right where the light was coming down from the skylight. That was when we realized the building was a mausoleum and the stone case on the floor was a sarcophagus. A stone coffin. Although there was nothing else in there, it felt strangely crowded. As if there were things that I cannot see on my eyes.
What are you doing in here?
I noticed the lock was broken and I came in to have a look.
You shouldn't have done that.
I didn't mean any harm, believe me.
He won't like it.
Who's he?
The thing that sleeps in that stone coffin. You didn't notice the writing over the door as you came in, did you? That's a shame, 'cause you didn't know what you was getting into.
I don't understand. I just wanted to see this house. I live here in a hotel, the same block.
That don't make no difference. He doesn't care what your reasons were.
Who's he?
They called him Mr. Thomas when he was living. They call him the death that walks now that he's dead. People around here seen him at night. He's dead, but they seen him walking. I know, 'cause I seen him myself.
His words make me laugh, but I controlled myself.
You don't believe what I'm telling you, that's all right with me. I don't care what you believe. But you listen to what I'm saying now. If I was you, I'd get away from this place as fast as I could. Not just this place, but this town. This part of the country.
Why?
Want me to tell you a little story? All right. Maybe you'll believe me then. Old Mr. Thomas came from some place in Europe. I say old, but he really wasn't old. Just seemed that way. He bought the house and grounds here and had them cleaned up, till the place looked like it was brand new. Then he started building this here building. There was something funny about Thomas. Something in his eyes that made you frightened of him. His eyes, they looked like the eyes of a dead man. He didn't act like anyone I ever knew. He was always talking about death, always telling me how he could come back after death. I was the caretaker then, just like I am now. After this building was completed, I used to watch him at night. He'd come out here. It seemed like he was in some sort of trance. He'd stay out here for hours, and when he'd come back to the house his eyes would glisten and shine, so you couldn't hardly look at him. A week before he died, he told me that as long as I live, I was to take care of this place, 'cause if I didn't he'd come back and kill me. And then he died. Just like that. And he was put in here, in this coffin. One night, about 2 months later when the moon was full, I heard a noise. And when I come out to look, I saw the door to this place opening, and him come out in the moonlight. I could hear his footsteps. Something queer and dragging dash-like. Then he turned around and I could see his face in the moonlight, pale and pasty, and sick-looking. Those eyes of his seemed like two burning coals of fire. He seemed to be looking at me. I heard him say, "They have disturbed me, and the moon has awakened me. I shall follow them." That's what he said. I heard him just as plain as you're hearing me. And then, he vanished into the night. Towards morning, I heard his footsteps again. I heard that big iron door closing. And I knew he was back. The next day I heard Ralph Cummings died the night before, screaming something about not meaning to go into the mausoleum. I knew who killed him. This has happened again and again for the last 10 years since he's been dead. Folks around here say he'll follow you wherever you go if you come inside here.
Why haven't you been killed?
Because he needs me. He ain't gonna kill me. But if I was you, I'd get out of this part of the country just as soon as I could.
Okay, sir, I am leaving. I am sorry if I disturbed you.
I wish I'd been here when you came.
As I walked out, I looked up and saw the writing above the door. It read, "If you enter here, into the realm of death, I shall follow you, and bring you with me." I didn't said anything about this incident to my wife Jane. That night. It is late and the moon has risen full in the sky. Jane is standing by the window looking out. For some reason, I was feeling uneasy about morning incident, yet I know that a few months from now I will laugh at the memory of my fright. It was a beautiful night. Jane and I looked out the window. The moon was so big and full, all of a sudden, we noticed a man standing on the street below. He was looking straight up at us and pointing at us. His face was pale and pasty looking and his eyes were like two bright coals of fire.
Then I told everything about morning incident to Jane.
The man down in the street, whoever he was, left after about 10 minutes. He gave us quite a fright. If I had felt any doubts as to whether we should leave this place, they've all been dispelled now. I don't know what to believe. Jane has just gone to bed. I think I'll do the same. As we were settling down to sleep last night, we heard footsteps pacing back and forth. They were coming from the room above us. I called down and complained to the clerk at reception. He told us that the room above ours was unoccupied. A short time afterwards, we left the hotel. We immediately got into our car and drove all night and all day. We are stopping now in a motel almost 1,000 miles away. It's reassuring to know that he can't possibly follow us. I'm very tired. I will go to bed and get an early start in the morning. But in the new motel, last night was not very comforting either. We heard the same footsteps outside our room, and Jane let out a scream. She claimed she saw the man's face outside the window. This morning when I went to pay the bill, the motel owner said that a strange, pasty-faced man had been in earlier and told him to tell me that he would follow me. For a few months, we faced same incident again and again. Every time we changed a new hotel, we thought, he will not follow us again, but everywhere we go, he is there also. It's impossible to get any material together that will help me in my work. I don't know what to do anymore. We can't stop for the night without him showing up. The only sleep we get anymore is in the car while on the road. Jane and I started argued about this. Since we've been on the run, that seems to be all we ever do. She wanted to go home. I fear that if we go home, he will stalk us there too. She felt it was the only place left to turn. I didn't know what to say, so we left for home. After 3 months we arrived our home. I called my friend Gary as soon as we got home. He said he'd be out within the hour to see us. Gary wasn't able to help us in any way. I really didn't expect any help. I was hoping he would be able to offer some suggestion as to what to do. However, last night was the first night in months that we haven't been aware of his presence. Maybe Jane is right. Perhaps he won't follow us here. We have not seen or heard anything unusual since we first came home. For the past 2 months, a feeling of peace and security has enveloped the house. Jane and I have been able to go around with no sense of danger or dread. But last night that feeling was shattered. Gary had come over for dinner. It was almost 10 o'clock. We heard footsteps upstairs. "He is back," I gasped. I asked Gary to come upstairs with me to investigate. Jane stayed downstairs and waited anxiously for us to return. We cautiously made our way upstairs. The footsteps sounded like they were coming from the guest bedroom. Gary and I opened the door and peered inside. It was empty. All of a sudden, we heard a scream. It was Jane. We ran back downstairs and found Jane sitting in an armchair. Her eyes were wide open and there was a look of unimaginable horror on her face. She was dead. Next day we buried her. I sit here in the empty house, photo of her, in my hand. I know that soon he will come for me too. It's lonely here. Yet, suddenly I have the feeling that I am not alone. Someone is here with me. He is here, in this room with me. I am afraid to turn to meet him. Those eyes of his burning into me. Yet, I must. I pray.